Good evening, one and all. It's an honor to have amongst us Kabir Bedi sir, Papa CJ. And it's going to be, I assure all the viewers who are there online, you are going to have a wonderful and an awesome time this Saturday evening. So we have gathered here this evening on a Saturday for the online book launch of Kabir Bedi sir's new title. The name of the title is Stories I Must Tell, the emotional life of an actor, to great critical acclaim. As it is said, the persona or the voice of Kabir Bedi sir, we have been mesmerized over the years. And as his persona is, which cannot be contained in sort of a one continent. So likewise, his career has spent over three continents and in three mediums, which is films, TV, and theater, in Bollywood, Hollywood, and Europe. And in this vast career, he has done many roles in American television series, The Bold and Beautiful. Who can forget the James Bond movie, Roger Moore's film Octopussy, and his European series Santokan, and his Bollywood blockbuster Khoon Bari Mang. So you always have been uh, wherever we see that movie, it sort of gives us goosebumps. And for Kabir sir, as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. So his Sandokan Italian series broke all broadcasting records in Europe. For his lifetime achievement, Cavalier, a knighthood. In theatre, he has starred at the Luminato Theatre Festival in Canada, in London's West End, and in India as Alit Padamsee's Othello and Tughlaq. So Sir has worn many hats, as we all know, and he's a long-standing member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science, which awards the Oscars. He's known for his social causes in India, and he's closely knitted with Sight Savers, which helps to restore the blinds, and which has in India has restored the sights of over 5 million blind and visually challenged for free. So this book definitely will give you an insight over personal and professional life of Kabir Bedi sir. Without taking much time, I would also like to introduce Papa CJ, who's going to be in conversation with Kabir Bedi sir for this evening. So as you all know, he has shifted his, I would say, there's a lot of paradigm shift what he has personally done from a stand-up comic. Now he is also renowned executive coach, and he has published, and he is already a published author. He holds an MBA degree from the University of Oxford. As an executive coach, he has worked with 50 plus blue chip companies across the globe. He has been invited to speak at Harvard Business School and written for Harvard Business Review. If I'm not mistaken, as of yesterday, his one of the reviews had been published in the HBR, that is Harvard Business Review. And he has worked across cultures with age groups in over 25 countries. His experience and expertise exist at the intersection of creativity, communication, humor, business, leadership development, and human interaction. So, without taking much time, over to you, Papa CJ, and to all the wonderful viewers and listeners. Definitely, you are going to have a great time. So, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Harshil. Sir, it is absolutely wonderful to be here speaking with you. For the purpose of this conversation, I will address you as Sir. The last person I said this to complained, says, no, you can't call me Sir. I haven't been knighted. But in your case, you have. So I suppose that should be okay.
That's okay if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Now, some of the questions I had prepared for you are, of course, around your wonderful book. But there have been a lot of interviews with you around the book. So I have pulled in a few questions which are outside the scope of your book as well. And I'm going to start off with one of those. A little birdie told me that a young Kabir Bedi used to flush his socks down the toilet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I always resented going to school, and I felt it was an imposition on my time and my life. And the family that I came from was very culturally rich, great idealists, freedom fighters, later religious figures, but they had no money, really. So we lived in very bare bones kind of existence, sort of in a government flat in Moti Bagh, among 5 different homes they had to rent and move to, etc. So I had only 2 pairs of socks. So one day I thought, if I get rid of my socks, then I won't be able to go to school because I won't have socks. So I flushed my socks down the toilet and said, I can't find my socks. And there was a big crisis in the house because the other pair was dirty and couldn't dry in time. And I got a day off. So that was my way of skipping school because I had only 2 pairs of socks at a certain stage of my childhood.
So I think that says something about the family, that they would rather you stay at home than go to school without any socks.
No, I was the one who said, I can't go to school without socks. Everyone laugh at me. They'll joke, they make me the butt of all jokes. I'll never hear the end of it. I just didn't want to go to school. So that's what happened. And because I was a reluctant student, I didn't do well in my time in Delhi Public School. And that's why I was sent to a boarding school, Sherwood. And there, they certainly made me sit down and do my homework and do everything. And I finally passed the first division and therefore got into St. Stephen's, etc. But during my earlier years, in fact, I began life like that. The first time they sent me to school when I was in Srinagar, I refused to enter it. And they said, okay, he'll get used to it. So they put me on a pony and walked me around the ground. And this went on for 1 week before I finally agreed to go to classes. So I had a week of pony rides before I entered my first classroom.
But sir, it's interesting because in your answer, you seem to give the impression that after you went to Sherwood, you were all sorted out. But this mischief was still very much a part of you, because in 1966, as a 21-year-old, you blagged your way into an interview with the Beatles.
I did.
That first chapter about that, how you got that interview, is absolutely beautiful. I'm not going to give that away for our readers. But the one thing I do want to say is that when you interviewed John Lennon, one of the questions you asked him was that what his advice was for the youth. And his answer was, question everything and don't be afraid of being a rebel. So my question to you is this: was that good advice? Did you take it? And if so, can you share in what ways you think you have been a rebel? And would you give that advice to your grandchildren as well?
I certainly was a rebel in many ways. Again, the reason I got the interview with the Beatles is because I was working for All India Radio as a freelancer to pay for my way through college at St. Stephen's. And how I got there and all that is this wonderful story in the book. But it wasn't just John Lennon's advice. I was always a natural rebel. I had grown up in the Sikh tradition. I had my mother's Buddhist tradition. Yet I was always a seeker, trying to find out what the truth is, what is really right, and what is the truth of our existence. But also, when the 60s happened, all this happened in the 60s, which were probably the most exciting generation of the last century. And we were part of a social change that was happening. People were demonstrating against the Vietnam War. Hippies were, tuning out and dropping out. There were counterculture movements going on. People were wearing psychedelic clothes, etc. And there was rebellion in the air. So we became, Pratima and I, one of the first bohemians in Bollywood. We were the original bohemians of Bollywood. And that's part of the whole story of our relationship. It was a very bohemian relationship in many ways, which I've shared in my book. And we certainly pushed the envelope. Just the very fact that we lived together without being married was headlines in magazines in those days. So we weren't afraid of shocking people. We were happy to shock people. And I think it is the duty of every generation to shock their elders and do things that elders think, how can you do that? Because that's how society progresses. As Albert Camus said, it's the rebels within society that make it dynamic. So we wanted to be the rebels, and we wanted to make our society dynamic. We wanted to change the setup and the order. And perhaps we took it a step too far, but we were the rebels of our time.
Well, you said it's the duty of every generation to shock the previous one and to be a rebel. How have your kids shocked you?
Pooja shocked me by being more conservative than me. She actually ended up being more conservative than me. I thought, wait a minute, she's supposed to be more outrageous than me. She's not. Adam, my son, also shocked me because he chose a very circuitous route to finding fulfillment, which he's doing brilliantly now in Hollywood in special effects. But he took his time getting there, and that certainly shocked me because I thought he'd take easier paths, but he found his own way. So children do have a habit of pushing the envelope and then making things different. And even my granddaughter, Alaya, shocked me because she got admission into the New York, the NYU, as in the directing course, which is something people kill for. And yet she left that after 1 year saying, this is not what I want to do. I've decided I want to act. And then she trained herself as an actress, and God, how she worked at it. And we're saying, at least finish the NYU course. You'll have plan B in case it doesn't work out as an actress. You'll get work in the industry. You'll be qualified from the NYU. Had shocked me by choosing her own path and making a success of it and winning the Filmfare Award for Best Debut Actress for their first film. So I'm so proud of Alaya. Yeah. And that's what the young generation does. They shock you and they push the boundaries in ways we don't expect.
In fact, I saw her debut film and she was absolutely fantastic in it. So I've heard stories about women on the streets of Italy shouting, "I want to have your baby," to you. Two questions. First one, when was the last time somebody shouted that at you? And secondly, did you ever oblige?
Actually, that happened only once, and it happened in Spain in the middle of a massive fan melee. And of course, the Spanish media picked that up and got quoted forever. So that became the mantra that was ascribed to me in Spain. And no, I didn't oblige by giving anyone babies that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
That I'm aware of.
Sure. So in 1933, in Oxford, your dad, Baba Bedi, a member of the Indian National Movement, married a beautiful young English girl, your mother, Frida. Now, right. No doubt such an alliance would lead to challenges, including your mother being referred to as convict number 3613.
Right.
Can you share some of the challenges that your parents faced due to their union and what you learned about relationships from them?
An excellent question, CJ. Excellent question. You've been to Oxford, so you know what the ambience of Oxford is. But in the 30s, it was quite a racist place. And there were signs outside doors saying no coloreds and Indians. And when my father proposed to my English mother, and she agreed to marry him, this caused huge resentment. Firstly, she was a peaches and cream English beauty with the intelligence that got her into Oxford. And all the Brit boys thought, this is our territory. How dare an Indian come trampling on it? But they were bonded by an idealism for the underprivileged, for opposed colonialism, which made my mother, even though she loved England, but she opposed colonialism, and she joined my father in that journey to India. So her being convict number XYZ was because she was picked by Mahatma Gandhi as a satyagrahi, and she led the demonstration in Dera Baba Nanak, our hometown, and was in prison for it. And the same kind of idealism led my father to play his role in the freedom struggle. And to just go back a moment to their moment of marriage, when they actually married in the Oxford Registry Office, the 21st of June 1933, the registrar refused to shake hands with them, pointedly, because this is something just not done. But they were united in this idealism. And that is an amazing story, because in that time, a lot of people sacrificed a lot of things. And we've heard about all the great sacrifices people made. But this was quite extraordinary what they did. They could have come back to India and got the best jobs. And they chose to fight for the country's freedom and had really very little money for the rest of their lives. And we were always battling lack of money in the family, even though they were culturally rich, they were politically connected, because all these revolutionaries became great figures. Gyani Zail Singh became president of India, Inder Kumar Gujral became prime minister, Sheikh Abdullah became the ruler of Kashmir. What I learned from them was really the courage to live your life on your terms and not be pushed into doing something that's respectable or safe or guaranteed income just for the security of it, but trying to look for something that makes your soul sing. And that courage to be different, I think I got from them.
Yeah.
Because their lives are certainly an example of that. And then also how they faced great financial difficulty with great calm. We had very little in our childhood in terms of material things and good food and toys and all that. But I never felt deprived, because they never gave me the feeling that we were deprived. It was the simplest of homes. The doors were never locked to our home. In the morning, we had to wake up and find some old revolutionary sleeping in the sitting room, because he'd come to see Baba Bedi's old friend from the revolution days.
Yeah.
And they were all comrades. So, if they came to Delhi, they had a place to shelter themselves. That was the kind of environment in which I grew up. And I learned so much from them, just by the example of their lives, which I've talked about. There's a whole chapter in my book on their lives, and above all, their extraordinary relationship. Because even though they were later divided by beliefs, even divided by continents, yet how this couple managed to remain soulmates to the end of their life is a remarkable story, even if they were not my parents.
I associate so much with the kind of home you grew up in. I write about exactly the same thing. When you grew up in sort of a middle class background. So, for example, I grew up in a house where shampoo never finished. It just magically became thinner over time. And the same with the bottle that had tomato sauce eventually had tomato soup. So
right.
Tell me this.
There's so many. There's so many parallels actually between what you've done and what I've done. I mean, you've taken Indian talent and you've made it international. You've traveled all over the world and made names, and we received many accolades and awards internationally. You are an international Indian, like I am. So I do feel a kindred spirit there when I talk to you.
So
I must say, I had great joy in reading your book as well.
Oh my God! I'm so humbled that you have that with you. So that's
absolutely.
So
Congratulations on that.
Not at all. I need to sign a copy and send it to you as soon as possible.
Please do that. Love to do that.
Tell me this, sir. Since we've spoken about parents, can you tell me how different 3 generations of Bedi parenting are? How were your parents different as parents to how you are and how your daughter possibly is as a parent?
Oh boy, no pressure there. My parents pretty much did what they thought right and lived their lives accordingly and treated us with great love, even in the midst of lacking many things. And this made enormous sacrifices to make sure that we all had a good education. The final stage in St. Stephen's I had to pay for myself, but they're the ones that got me the education that got me into St. Stephen's.
Yeah.
So one certainly admires that about them. As far as I'm concerned, like my parents, I basically said to my children, do what you do. There's Pooja, there's Siddharth, who unfortunately passed away, and there's Adam in LA. And each one found their own path. I've encouraged them to do whatever they wanted, as long as it was positive and as long as it led towards something. Whenever any of them went on a path where I thought they were not on the right track, I let them find their own feet in that. I didn't support everything that I thought was wrong. And I think when I look at my grandchildren, Alaya and Omar, I see in them children that have been very well brought up, children who've, Alaya certainly has found her feet and found her purpose. Omar is still in that process, but they have received great support from their parents. So altogether, I can't complain. I can only praise the parenting that I received, and I've always kept I've had 4 marriages and 3 divorces, but I never divorced my children. I always kept them in my life in terms of them coming to me whenever they could, and me coming to see them whenever I could, paying for their education, paying for whatever they needed, and always being theirs, telling them if they ever needed to reach out to me, I was there. I think that sense of being the father figure is very important, because sometimes parents try to become friends to their children. Children don't need friends. They have lots of friends. They need father and mother figures. And that's what I try to be for my children.
Okay. Tell me, sir, as a comedian, I'm normally expected to be funny even when I'm not performing on stage. Now, you're somebody who's always been known for his good looks. Do you ever feel pressure to keep looking good? And how have you felt being objectified and occasionally being viewed as a very delicious piece of meat?
CJ, there's no answer that I can give to that wouldn't get me into trouble. Because if I say, yeah, I'm a good-looking guy, what to do, man? I was blessed with this, and people love me, and I'm great. What an arrogant bastard, That's what they'll say. If I say, no, I'm not good-looking, you're exaggerating, people say, jhoot bol raha. So you're a liar. So the fact is, I have been blessed with certain good looks, and I can't take any credit for it. My parents gave that to me. I didn't shape my nose, my face, my body. I got that as a gift. And certainly I've used it. It has been a great advantage in my life. And who the hell doesn't like being appreciated? Every man and woman wants to be appreciated. And I'm no different to them. So if I get appreciated for the way I look, great, I love it. But I've never felt, the pressure to be good looking at all times, no matter what the situation. In fact, my friend Johnny Bakshi said to me, you don't care what you wear because you're so good looking. And I said, no, it's just because I don't feel the need to be perfect all the time. I like to feel I'm human, and I like to underplay, if anything, the way I look. And that's been part of my life. But I can't say that my looks have not helped me. They certainly have. They've been the basis of many roles I've got, why I got cast in many of the big films, and the adulation that I got, especially in Europe, and other things I did, The Bold and the Beautiful, and Octopussy, etc. So, yes, it's good to be admired for the way you look. And hey, you look like a fantastic guy yourself. You remind me a bit of John Lennon, actually, and he was my idol. So that's no small praise from me.
I get that a lot, but John Lennon without the talent. I
wouldn't say that. There's a lot of talent there.
Any dating advice for people like me who are not blessed with your good looks and charisma?
I don't think you have any problem getting dates, CJ. I don't think you have any problem. You would be a prime catch for any girl because of your intelligence, your looks, your wit. And
let's quickly move to the next question before I'm further embarrassed. Okay, sir. Let's jump from objectification in dating to the next logical topic, which is spirituality. Now, there is a vein of spirituality that runs through at least three generations of Bedis. Your parents, you, and quite interestingly, with your son Siddharth, who I believe His Holiness the Karmapa wanted him to be a Lama. And when he was born, the Lamas came and chanted as well. Can you tell me the role that spirituality has played through the generations of your family?
Spirituality has always been very much part of me, and that's also part of my book, because beyond the looks, beyond the acting that I've done and the accolades I've received, there is an inner part of me, an inner journey that I've always had, which is linked deeply to the spiritual, as I said, from my father's Sikh side. And he then became a very brilliant New Age philosopher, which I've explained his philosophy in my book, and how he
Yes.
sees consciousness as the center of everything, and conscience. And my mother's Buddhist upbringing, plus in her journey into Buddhism, I also became a Buddhist monk, even as a child, for 3 months of my life, and learned Vipassana from the great Mahasi Sayadaw, who taught the great Goenkaji his meditation, who then brought it to India and spread it everywhere. So that spiritual search, of which also is one chapter of my book, took me to meet many dazzling figures along the way, or learn about them, or hear about them, or read about them, including Osho and Jiddu Krishnamurti and Deepak Chopra, and the classics like Swami Vivekananda and Paramahansa Yogananda, and the Seth material by Jane Roberts, etc. There's a lot of things that I've learned from many sources before I arrived at a belief system, which I have shared now in the thing. And our family are descendants of Guru Nanak, so there is a Sikh lineage that is very much part of me. I'm not sure how much of my spirituality comes from there. I'm sure something does. But given my parents' natural spiritual bent, it was natural that I was attracted to that and curious about that. So it has been a very alive part of my life. So I hope in my book people are able to see the inner Kabir and the deeper Kabir in ways that entertain them, enlighten them, amuse them, amaze them, beyond the way that I look, of which I'm not complaining.
Tell me, sir, you spoke about the inner Kabir. 2 questions. How was the experience of writing the book for you in terms of when you, as somebody who's been through it himself, when you went back to think about the different things that you went through in life, did you relive those emotions? And what are some of the things that you think you may have missed out on putting in the book, or that you would have liked to have included?
CJ, writing this book was easy at one level because it was a story bursting to come out, and I'd held it back for so long because I wasn't sure how to tell it, etc. When I was clear, I just flowed like an exploding volcano spewing lava. It's a force bigger than me. Yet it was certainly very painful to go back into the painful parts of my life. The joyful parts we can all talk about, the glories you had and the fans you saw and the awards you received and what Sandokan meant to a whole generation of people in Europe. All that is lovely stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But the painful parts, and that's why people talk about, they're amazed how honest I could be. What they're really saying is, in my book, I've told a lot of secrets of things that a lot of people would normally keep secret about themselves, about their lives, about their relationships, about their failures. All those things I have explored, and it was not easy. Because if I go back into the tragedy of my son, I had to relive that, and I had to write about it in a way whereby people can actually see what happens between a father and son in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And what it is to experience that, as if you were in that room with me, as if you were overhearing or watching us on at close range. But to do that, I had to actually go back and feel all those emotions all over again. as it was in many of my relationships that I've talked about. Because relationships are beautiful, they're also traumatic, they're also turbulent, they're also unpleasant at times. And to go into that and say, yep, that's what happened. And I could do that because I was equally harsh on myself at times. I didn't spare myself. I didn't hide my frailties, my mistakes, which is why people say it's honest. But that gave me the right and the ability to share my story in the most authentic way I could, in a way that people can relate to, in a way that becomes a deeply human experience. And that's what my book is. It is the story of being human. Beyond Delhi boy goes to Bollywood, goes to Hollywood, goes what it is like to be human, to enjoy the euphoria of success, to suffer the pain of collapse. And you've seen that in your life too. I've read your book. And you know what it's like to live a roller coaster life, highs and lows, turbulent relationships. And to take people through that was my mission. And I like to think I've succeeded to some great extent.
Oh, absolutely. So when it comes to relationships and you write about them, there are two people in that story. Did you find yourself ethically challenged at some point, thinking, I know I'm okay to be vulnerable and authentic about myself. Where do you draw the line on how much you talk or write about somebody else?
Let's take the case of Parveen and Pratima. Pratima has already written her book, which is her truth, however she saw it. There's already a definitive book on Parveen Bhabhi by Karishma Upadhyay. And although she got a few facts wrong, basically I'm not arguing with the substance of that. My story is my story. It is my truth. It is the way I saw it, the way I suffered it, the way I lived it, the way I perceived it. And therefore, I didn't have any compunctions because I wasn't seeking to malign anybody. There was no malice in there. There was no secret agendas to assassinate the character of anybody. That's what it was. I made mistakes, they made mistakes, and I've told it all. So that tag of saying it's very candid, it's very honest, it's very raw, comes from the fact that I was able to share it with the same openness that their lives have been written about. And I had to tell my truth. So there was no, doubt in my mind or hesitation in writing it like I saw it.
So what have you found to be some of the biggest challenges for you to live a life that has been very much in the public domain?
There is always in a celebrity a desire for a certain degree of privacy, and which can never always be had, because wherever you go, you're recognized. People write about you. Your relationships are written about. I can't just walk into a square in Italy and admire the sunset without 20 people coming up to me and saying, "Please give us." Nowadays, it's selfies. In those days, it's autographs. So that aspect of just blending in with everybody and admiring the beauty of a sunset from a cafe, uninterrupted, that you lose. But then conversely, there is a desire of people to know more about you because they like you, they love you, they want to know everything about you. So there's no firm rights here. The public have a right to know, or celebrity has a right to publicity. These are competing desires. And you find a kind of balance as to how much of your life to share, because you can't resent people wanting to know about your life. That's why did you even become famous if you didn't want that? You could have taken an anonymous job. So you have to accept that comes with the territory. But by the same token, doesn't mean everyone has a right to know everything about you. But in this book, pretty much, I let them know everything about me. But that's because I've come to a point in my life when I can talk about them honestly, and I say, let the chips fall where they may.
They don't have the right to know everything about you for free. They need to buy the book.
They need to buy my book. And that's the important thing, I sometimes wonder whether a lot of people have given up reading books with all the distractions of social media and gaming and films and streaming services and everything competing for their time. And I saw this wonderful cartoon the other day of this guy looking at a book, and this girl is asking him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm reading a book to see if I can do it, to see if I can still do it."
Yeah.
It's like you lost the practice of reading a book. But the fact is, yes, all those things that we talked about are great entertainment, but so are books.
Yeah.
And in terms of expressing the inner world and expressing things at the level of feelings and sharing the mind of somebody as he goes through experiences, nothing beats the experience of a book.
Sure.
So, yes, there's great entertainment in cinema, in television, in theater, in performing arts, in music. But the experience of a book is something you cannot get from somewhere else because it is so deep and personal.
Yeah.
If there's a scene described, you ascribe your own images to it. If there's sounds there, you ascribe your own sounds to it.
Yeah.
You create that book together with the writer. And that's a very wonderful, immersive experience that book reading gives you. And especially an interesting life that has led, that has had one hell of a journey, which is what I have, which is what you have.
Here's a question, sir. If your book was turned into a film, who would you want to play Kabir Bedi and why?
Excuse me. I can't answer that, CJ, because if my book was turned into a film or a miniseries or an OTT series, the producers would decide that. I could only talk about giving contributions to their understanding of my story. I would leave that to them. My speculating
go on, sir.
I would
Give us
love
an
so-and-so
answer for
to
this
do my
one.
role. No, but
Go on.
again, CJ, wait a minute. It's not just defensive. My story spans a lot of years. Leave aside my childhood. If you start with my interview with the Beatles, which was the turning point of my life, which actually forced me to leave Delhi because of all that followed.
Yeah.
From the age of 20 to the age of 70, there are many Kabirs along the way. And I'm not sure one actor could play them all unless there was incredible makeup done or incredible special effects done. Because in a sense, while the essence remains the same, the experiences change an individual and affect you and mold you in different ways. So yes, the inner boy within me is always still there. But the adult who has learned from experience has developed a far more refined psyche, which is why today I can write with a far greater understanding of the past. And had I written this book earlier, I wouldn't have had that understanding. I wouldn't have been able to see my younger self with the same kind of compassion and kindness. And these are two things I really believe are important in life, compassion and kindness. So I can't say who should play me because probably many actors will need to play me over a lifetime because in a strange way, I have led many lifetimes within one lifetime, as I've shown in my book.
Yeah. So how are you doing on time? Are you okay to do a few more questions?
Sure. With you, anytime, CJ.
Yes, you're too kind. You spoke about the Beatles, the interview with the Beatles being an inflection point in your life. What are some of the other points in your life that you feel may have been turning points and why?
There have been many turning points. The interview with the Beatles, which then had such repercussions that I decided to leave Delhi. My desire, my changed in going to from Bollywood to Europe, then pushing the envelope and going to Hollywood. And then the reverses that I faced in Hollywood in the later years because of bad investments, nothing else. Not that I couldn't pay my alimonies or I couldn't pay for my children's education, just bad investment. Yeah. And how I rose from that was another huge turning point. Even becoming a writer is another turning point. But CJ, when I say this, I don't want people to imagine that by my giving an overview of my life, that they know my story. It's like looking at the sea and saying, yeah, I've seen the waves and I know what's in the ocean. You don't know. You've got to dive in. You've got to dive in and feel this extraordinary life that I've lived in very raw emotional terms and make it an experience that in some way entertains you, thrills you, humors you, whatever it does. But just knowing the graph of my life, that's in every biography. What makes my biography so well reviewed? Every biography talks about the graph of somebody's life. So I'm giving you the graph of my turning points. But that's not my book. The taste of the pudding is in the eating, which is going into the cake.
Absolutely. So, sir, tell me this: who were your role models, and what did you? I know the Beatles were one of them. What did you learn from them? I mean, did you receive any advice? Did you follow it?
The Beatles were certainly my big role models. When I came to Bombay, the first person who I was blessed to have as my boss was a man called Jason D'Acuna, and he was the head of Lintas. And I spent 5 years in advertising between Lintas and Ogilvy and Mathis, so I'm an ad man as well. Jason has always been a figure of great inspiration for me because he was not only a brilliant ad man, he was a man with an enormously compassionate heart that had believed in major social causes. And that resonated with me because my parents lived for social causes. Alec Padamsee was another, I wouldn't say role model, but a man who influenced my life very deeply by making me play Tughlaq early in my life, which led to Bollywood. And later in my life, play Othello, which got me my third wife, Nikki. She was my Desdemona. So, I also admired Khushwant Singh greatly because he was a Sikh who also wrote a lot about things that I was deeply interested in. And in fact, I remember a quote of his where he said, I was inspired to write not by the great literature of English, but by the duffers who were being printed in the press, in the books. He said, if these buggers can write and be printed, I can be printed. So he started writing and became an extraordinarily accomplished writer. And he also told me the way to write. He said, phone chakkar rakh deo. Put the phone aside and set the hours aside and get down to writing. So he gave me a method as well. There are many inspirational people I met along the way. I mean, meeting Fellini was enormous. Meeting all of which I've described in my book. My conversation with Audrey Hepburn, meeting Bertolucci, the people I met in Hollywood. Sean Connery was another great idol of mine, and to meet him in the flesh was something else. So all these things are part of my story, but I really think the most inspirational figures in my life are my parents because of their deep human commitment to the welfare of everyone and what they were willing to sacrifice for their ideals. My father at one point in his life started this nationalistic paper in Lahore called Monday Morning because the British didn't print on Mondays, they took Sundays off. And he started Monday Morning, nationalist paper. And Balraj Sahni came to him and wanted to help him. And he told Balraj Sahni, he says, my dear Balraj, if this was a literary magazine, I would say come. But this is a political paper. And to run a political paper with no money is a dog's job. And we are dogs, out to be whipped by our own choice. So leave us to it. We'll get on with it. You go, you be an artist. And Balraj Sahni left them after a few weeks. But he was the first to welcome me when I came to Bollywood to begin my career. And his son Parikshit has been a dear friend since. And I always loved Balrajji because I remember seeing him in Do Bhiga Zameen, which moved me to tears. So this is how things happen in life.
So what do you consider your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Two failures. One was I was very careless with my money. I made very dangerous investments. When you don't have money and suddenly you get a lot of money, you think, wow. But then even that lot of money is not enough to buy homes in California, which are sold in, $5 million, $10 million $20 million. And you want to, hey, I'm a star now, I want to buy a big house. So to get that big house, you then make these risky investments, which then blow up in your face, and you end up with major financial crises because of those investments. So those are the failures. Plus, I think trusting some people close to me was a big mistake I made, a big failure of judgment. Trust should really be earned and something that shouldn't just be given because somebody's you look up to somebody or something. So those are a failure, but it's okay to fail. It's human to fail. Question: how do you rise from that? How do you lift yourself? How do you go back to the sources that made you who you are? To remember the fire in the belly of that boy that went to get that interview with the Beatles and how he got through to them. The fire in the belly of the boy that left Delhi with 700 rupees in the pocket, determined to make a new life. The fire in the belly of the guy in advertising who gave up all the security of advertising to join the insecurity of Bollywood. Those are things you have to remember. What are the strengths in you in your time of adversity? And that's what I reached out to rise. And I resurrected my career. I resurrected my life. Even if in my personal life, I've had 3 divorces. I've remained friends with my ex-wife, which is important, met my responsibilities, but I didn't give up. I finally found a wonderful wife in Parveen Dosanjh. So my belief in marriage is vindicated at the end, even though I failed 3 times along the way. It's okay to fail. We all fail.
You sort of answered my next question about what the most impulsive decisions were you've taken and would you do them again. Before we get to the last quick short questions, what is your greatest fear? What are you insecure about today, if anything?
To be honest, CJ, I think there is always a certain financial insecurity that has been with me from my childhood. Because when you grow up in an atmosphere of not having money, it just creates a certain ambience. I'm the kind of person who goes into a mall or a department store and I can't stay there more than 45 minutes because certain anxiety comes into me. And I know where that comes from. Because my mother had so little money, when she went into a store with me, there was always that anxiety in her that I might ask her for things that she couldn't afford. And I picked that up through osmosis. So the fear of not having enough money, or running out of money and not being able to provide Parveen the security that I'd like to provide her, or the degree of security that I'd like to provide her, that is certainly a fear. And yet, there is also a spur, along with creative dissatisfaction, to do more, to achieve more, to build more. Because I am at heart an optimist, and I do believe the best is yet to come.
I'm with you completely, sir. I feel exactly the same thing walking into a store. I remember when I studied at Oxford, for an entire year, I used to look at Starbucks from outside. I never had the courage to walk in because I could not imagine paying £2 for a cup of coffee, And as a kid who came from a middle-class family and had taken a loan, that was very intimidating. 5 last quick questions, sir. Number 1, most embarrassing moment of your life.
Most embarrassing moment of my life?
Are you shameless?
No. Most embarrassing moment of my life was when I was marrying Nikki. We married in the Ban Ganga in Bombay with all these temples lit up, and I was wearing this Tahil Ramani sherwani with a salwar underneath. And when I bent down for my father's blessing, because he married us, the nada of the salwar broke. And after that, I had to stand up and people were congratulating. And my salwar was falling down. So I had to hold on to it somehow. And there was no bathroom around there, where you can go quickly. And it was the most embarrassing moment I've ever had because my fear was that my salwar would fall around my ankles and I would become the laughing stock of the crowd. So it was potentially one of the most embarrassing moments of my life.
I'm going to ask you the same question that a 21-year-old Kabir Bedi asked John Lennon in 1966, what advice do you have for the youth of today?
I would say be very careful who you fall in love with and why you fall in love with them and why you want to live with them. Be very careful who you trust, because trust is not something you should give easily. Do not be afraid of taking the path less traveled if it makes your heart sing, if that's what you want to do. As the Buddha said, seek out your salvation with diligence.
The 3 characteristics you admire the most in another human being.
Kindness, compassion, and the desire to serve others.
Complete the sentence. Happiness to you is?
The freedom to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it.
And my last question, sir. How would you like to be remembered?
That's a tough one. Now you stumped me. Center stump gone. Because how I would be remembered is for people to decide after they read my book, after they know more of my life. I would be remembered by the sum total of everything that I've done and talked about and espoused. But a man who cared for others. Everyone who was in my life has been cared for by me in some way or the other.
Sir, I can't thank you enough for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you. For all of those
Thank you so much.
For everyone who is watching, please do pick up Mr. Kabir Bedi's book. It is
That's
at
the book.
Crossword.
Do check it out. Do check it out.
Stories, I must tell.
shamelessly put this before you because I think this is something that will give you an enriching experience.
It is at all the Crossword bookstores. It is at crossword.in. You may be lucky enough to find signed copies as well at the bookstores. Please do pick it up. I have gone through the book. It is as honest and vulnerable and open and authentic as this conversation has been. I'm a huge fan of yours, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And I wish you much happiness always.
Thank you, CJ. And I salute everything you've done in your life because you have had an exceptional and extraordinary life and you made India proud.
Thank you, sir.
And laugh.
You're most kind. Thank you. All the very best, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.